What if the Earth you think you know isn't the whole story at all? For most of us, our planet feels like a steady, familiar place. Oceans, mountains, forests and skies that have always been there. A safe stage where the drama of human history unfolds. But that picture is dangerously incomplete, because beneath its calm surface, Earth is far from peaceful. It is alive, restless, and unpredictable, hiding secrets that can shake our civilization and rewrite everything we thought we understood about the world. Every layer of Earth's history, from its violent birth in fire, to the strange forces that shield us from space, to the catastrophic events that nearly ended life itself, is filled with mysteries that sound more like science fiction than reality, and yet they are real, and many of them are still unfolding right now. Imagine this: an invisible shield, generated deep within the planet, quietly protecting us from deadly radiation from the sun. Without it, life on Earth would be impossible, but evidence shows that shield is weakening, and one day it could flip entirely, leaving us exposed in ways we can hardly imagine. Or picture a giant rock, larger than Mount Everest, slamming into Earth without warning, darkening the skies for years and erasing civilization overnight, just as one did 66 million years ago, ending the age of dinosaurs. These are not distant fantasy. They are threats that scientists study every day, because history proves they will happen again. The only uncertainty is when, and the dangers don't only come from above. Beneath our feet, massive reservoirs of fire lie in wait, capable of erupting with a force that could plunge the planet into volcanic winter. Entire species, entire civilizations, could vanish in the aftermath. Then there are the oceans, vast, unexplored, holding secrets both beautiful and terrifying, from mysterious sounds recorded in the deep to hidden reserves of methane that, if unleashed, could transform the climate overnight. The truth is that Earth is not just our home, it is a force powerful, dangerous, and full of mysteries we are only beginning to uncover. And what you're about to learn will change the way you see this planet forever. To understand the Earth we live on today, you first have to imagine a time when it looked nothing like the calm blue and green world we know. In fact, you wouldn't even recognize it. Rewind the clock more than 4.5 billion years, and Earth was a newborn planet, forged from chaos, colliding pieces of rock, gas, and dust left over from the birth of the sun. In those first violent moments, the planet was not the stable cradle of life we imagine. It was a hostile world, its surface a hellscape of molten oceans, searing heat, toxic gases, and endless bombardment from space. The young Earth was being hammered relentlessly by asteroids and comets, some carrying water, others carrying the raw materials that would one day form the building blocks of life. Each collision released energy equal to millions of nuclear bombs, melting rock, reshaping continents before they even had time to exist. This was not just the beginning of Earth, it was the crucible that defined everything to come. One of the most shocking events in Earth's early history was a collision so massive it changed the planet forever. Scientists believe that about 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized body, often called Theia, slammed into the young Earth. The force of this impact was unimaginable, so powerful that it ripped apart part of the planet and flung molten rock into space. Over time, that debris coalesced into the Moon, Earth's constant companion, which still orbits us today. But the Moon wasn't just a byproduct of catastrophe, it turned out to be essential for life. Without it, Earth's tilt would wobble wildly, climates would swing between extremes, and stability needed for life might never have taken hold. So from the very beginning, catastrophe was not just a threat, it was also a gift, shaping the conditions that made life possible. Yet, even after the Moon's birth, Earth remained alien and unrecognizable. The surface was covered by vast magma oceans, with continents still unborn and an atmosphere choking with carbon dioxide, methane, and other toxic gases. Breathing here would have been impossible. The skies were filled with volcanic eruptions and lightning storms, a constant reminder of the planet's restless energy. Temperatures soared high enough to melt rock, and any water that existed was boiled into steam. To call it inhospitable would be an understatement. This was a world designed to test survival at its harshest extremes, but slowly over millions of years, the chaos began to calm. The planet cooled, forming a solid crust that still shifted and cracked under constant bombardment. Water, delivered by icy comets and locked-in minerals, began to pool on the surface, forming the first primitive oceans. Rain fell, rivers carved into the rock, and seas spread across the land. For the first time, Earth looked less like a fiery wasteland and more like the beginnings of a planet that could host life. But it was still far from safe. The young sun was unstable, blasting out violent solar winds and radiation. Without a protective shield, Earth's thin atmosphere might have been stripped away. Fortunately, deep within the planet, a hidden force came to life. Earth's core began generating a magnetic field, an invisible shield that protected the surface from solar radiation. That magnetic field, still active today, is one of the only reasons Earth kept its atmosphere and its ocean. Without it, Earth might have ended up like Mars, barren, dry, and lifeless. Life, fragile and improbable, emerged in this hostile environment. Tiny microbes appeared in the oceans, clinging to hydrothermal vents where heat and minerals spewed from the seafloor. These vents provided warmth and chemical energy, creating a safe haven for the first organism. It's almost poetic. Life did not begin in calm lakes or gentle streams, but in the most extreme and dangerous places imaginable. These microbes adapted to conditions we would consider impossible: high heat, no oxygen, and crushing pressure. And from those tiny, unassuming beginnings, the story of life on Earth began. Yet the early Earth was anything but stable. For hundreds of millions of years, the planet endured what scientists call the Late Heavy Bombardment, a period when massive asteroids pelted the surface, boiling oceans, sterilizing vast regions, and threatening to wipe out life as soon as it appeared. Imagine a world where extinction wasn't a rare event, but a daily possibility. Life survived only by hiding, adapting, and waiting for the storms to pass. That survival was no accident. It was the first of many reminders that Earth's history is a constant dance between creation and destruction. Even as the surface stabilized, Earth's atmosphere underwent a dramatic transformation. The early atmosphere was toxic, filled with gases deadly to anything resembling modern life. But some of the earliest microbes began producing oxygen through photosynthesis, slowly altering the chemistry of the planet. At first, this was catastrophic. Oxygen was poisonous to most of the existing organisms, leading to one of the earliest mass die-offs in history. But in the long run, it was transformative. Oxygen paved the way for more complex life, setting the stage for the explosion of biodiversity that would come billions of years later. What began as a deadly poison became the very element that made advanced life possible. This theme repeats again and again in Earth's story: catastrophe creating opportunity, destruction leading to renewal. Every disaster carved out space for something new. The moon's violent birth stabilized the planet. The toxic atmosphere transformed into breathable air. The endless bombardment delivered the water and materials needed for life. And through it all, Earth proved it was not just a passive ball of rock floating through space. It was active, dynamic, and unpredictable. A world designed to challenge survival at every turn. But here's the unsettling truth. The same forces that shaped Earth's violent beginnings are still here today. The molten core that created the magnetic shield is also what drives earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The asteroids that delivered water are the same ones that can wipe out species in an instant. The atmosphere that sustains life is vulnerable to being stripped away or poisoned again. In other words, the chaos of Earth's birth never truly ended. It simply changed form. When you step outside and look at the calm sky, it's easy to believe the Earth is stable, but hidden in its past is a reminder that our planet was born in fire and chaos, and that chaos has never fully gone away. We are here today, not because Earth was safe, but because life adapted to its dangers. And if history tells us anything, it's that survival on this planet will always depend on adapting to the next great upheaval. Because what happened in Earth's violent birth was not just the beginning of the world, it was the beginning of a cycle of destruction and rebirth that has never stopped, and one that will continue to shape the planet and us for as long as we exist. If you want to understand the power of Earth, you don't need to look up at the sky or out across the oceans. You need to look down beneath your feet, because the ground we walk on, that solid surface we trust so completely, is not solid at all. It is a thin, fragile shell floating on unimaginable forces, a restless engine that has been reshaping the planet for billions of years. Deep below, Earth is alive, driven by heat left over from its birth and the constant decay of radioactive elements in the core. That heat fuels a churning cycle of molten rock, and it is this hidden movement that makes Earth unlike any other planet we know. It drives earthquakes, volcanoes, mountain building, and even the drifting of continents. It is also a constant reminder that the ground beneath us is never truly stable. The concept of tectonic plates might sound simple, but the reality is anything but. Earth's crust is broken into massive slabs, floating on the mantle like icebergs drifting on water. These plates move slowly, just a few centimeters each year, but over millions of years, they have reshaped the face of the planet. Continents that were once joined have split apart. Oceans that once existed have vanished. Mountain ranges have risen and eroded, only to rise again. Every landscape we see today is temporary, the result of this endless unseen dance. But this dance is not gentle. Where plates collide, pressure builds until it must release, often with catastrophic result. Earthquakes are the most immediate reminder of this hidden danger. A sudden shift in the crust can level cities in seconds, collapsing buildings and tearing apart the surface. Some of the deadliest disasters in human history have come not from war or disease, but from the violent movement of the Earth itself. In 2004, an undersea earthquake off the coast of Sumatra unleashed a tsunami that killed over 200,000 people across multiple countries. In 2011, another undersea quake struck Japan, triggering a tsunami that devastated entire towns and caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. These events are not rare accidents. They are inevitable results of a restless planet, reminders that stability is an illusion. But earthquakes are only part of the story. The same forces that shift the ground also feed volcanoes, some of the most awe-inspiring and destructive features on Earth. A volcano is not just a mountain, it is a vent into the planet's fiery heart, a pressure release valve for the energy building below. And when that pressure erupts, the results can change the world. Most eruptions are local, devastating to those nearby, but survivable for the planet as a whole. But some volcanoes are far more dangerous. These are the supervolcanoes, massive systems capable of eruptions so large they can blanket entire continents in ash and change the climate of the planet for years. Yellowstone in the United States is one of the most famous examples. Beneath its picturesque geysers and hot springs lies a magma chamber so vast that if it erupted at full force, it could eject thousands of cubic kilometers of ash into the atmosphere. The skies would darken, temperatures would plunge, and agriculture across the world would collapse. Humanity has never lived through such an event, but the geological record shows it has happened before. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupted, possibly triggering a global volcanic winter that nearly wiped out early humans. Imagine the modern world facing the same fate, billions of people dependent on fragile food systems, suddenly facing years without sunlight or harvests. The outcome would be unthinkable. What makes these forces so unsettling is that they are unstoppable. We cannot prevent tectonic plates from moving, or magma from rising, or pressure from building. At best, we can monitor, predict, and prepare, but even that is imperfect. Earthquakes often strike without warning. Volcanoes sometimes slumber for centuries before erupting violently. And the truth is, our technology gives us only a glimpse into the vast hidden systems beneath the surface. For all our knowledge, we are still blind to much of what happens inside our own planet. Yet these destructive forces are also creative. The shifting of plates builds mountains like the Himalayas, born from the collision of India and Asia. Volcanic eruptions create fertile soils, rich in minerals, where civilizations thrive. Entire islands, like Hawaii, are products of volcanic activity, rising from the ocean floor to become lush paradises. The same processes that destroy also build, a constant cycle of renewal that has shaped Earth's surface into the dynamic living world we know. It is a reminder that danger and creation are two sides of the same coin. Without earthquakes and volcanoes, Earth would be geologically dead, like Mars or the Moon. But with them it is alive, vibrant and ever-changing. And yet, the dangers are escalating in ways we often don't consider. As human populations grow and spread, more people live in areas vulnerable to these hidden engines. Megacities sit along fault lines, with millions at risk from a single quake. Communities thrive in the shadow of volcanoes, drawn by fertile soils but threatened by eruptions. Entire nations depend on stable climates that could collapse if a supervolcano erupts. Our civilization has built itself on a restless planet, and the risks are growing as we place more and more lives in harm's way. Perhaps the most disturbing part is that these forces are not slowing down. If anything, they remind us that Earth is still young and full of energy. Its core continues to churn, its plates continue to drift, its volcanoes continue to breathe. The illusion of stability is comforting, but it is just that, an illusion. Beneath every calm day lies the possibility of upheaval, and when it comes, it will not ask for permission. The hidden engines beneath our feet are both our greatest danger and our greatest gift. They have shaped the continents, created the landscapes we call home, and provided the conditions for life to flourish. But they are also reminders that Earth is not a passive planet. It is active, restless, and unpredictable. To live here is to live with risk, the risk that at any moment the ground could shake, the mountains could erupt, or the oceans could run. And if you think the threats below are unsettling, just look above, because as dangerous as Earth's inner engines are, the skies themselves hold forces just as mysterious and just as capable of rewriting the story of life in an instant. If there is one invisible force that makes life on Earth possible, it is the magnetic field. You can't see it, you can't feel it, but it is there every moment, wrapping the planet in a shield that protects us from a hostile universe. Without it, Earth would be a barren wasteland, stripped of its atmosphere and roasted by radiation. And yet, despite its importance, this shield is one of the least understood aspects of our planet. What's more, scientists have discovered something that should make every one of us uneasy. Earth's magnetic field is weakening, shifting, and could one day flip entirely. What would that mean for humanity? The answer is more unsettling than most people realize. The story of this mysterious shield begins deep inside the Earth, in the core. At the center of our planet lies a solid ball of iron and nickel, surrounded by a swirling outer layer of molten metal. This liquid core moves constantly, driven by heat escaping from Earth's interior. As it churns, it generates electric currents, and those currents produce a magnetic field, a process scientists call the geodynamo. This magnetic field extends far into space, forming what's known as the magnetosphere, an invisible bubble that deflects deadly solar radiation and cosmic rays. Without this bubble, the sun's powerful winds would slowly erode our atmosphere, leaving the Earth as lifeless as Mars. In fact, scientists believe Mars once had a magnetic field, but when its core cooled and the field collapsed, its atmosphere was stripped away. Today, it is a dry, frozen desert. Earth's shield is the only thing standing between us and the same fate. But this shield is not fixed. It flickers, drifts, and even flips. Evidence carved into ancient rocks shows that the magnetic poles north and south have reversed many times in Earth's history. These reversals are not regular, but they happen roughly every few 100,000 years, and the last one occurred about 780,000 years ago. That means by geological standards, we are overdue. And in recent decades, scientists have discovered disturbing signs that a reversal may already be underway. The field has been weakening at an unusual rate, dropping about 10% in the last 2 centuries. In some areas, the decline is even more dramatic. One region in particular has scientists alarmed: the South Atlantic anomaly, a massive stretch of weakened magnetic field extending from South America to Africa. Here, satellites passing overhead are bombarded with radiation normally deflected by the magnetosphere. These satellites often glitch, shut down, or suffer permanent damage. If this anomaly continues to grow, or if the field weakens globally, the consequences could extend far beyond satellites. Planes, power grids, and communication systems all rely on technology vulnerable to solar storms. A weakened shield means those storms could wreak havoc on Earth. Imagine a powerful solar flare, a massive burst of energy from the sun, striking Earth during a weakened magnetic period. The last major one, the Carrington event of 1859, lit up telegraph wires with sparks and set offices on fire. Back then, our dependence on technology was minimal. Today, the same event would be catastrophic. Power grids could fail worldwide, plunging billions into darkness. Satellites could be fried, crippling GPS, communication, and weather prediction. Planes could lose navigation. In short, modern civilization, built on fragile digital systems, could collapse in days. And if a pole reversal is truly coming, those risks will only grow. But here's where it gets even stranger. During a reversal, the magnetic field doesn't simply flip overnight. It weakens first, sometimes to as little as 10% of its normal strength, leaving Earth exposed for centuries. Multiple north and south poles may appear at once, creating a chaotic magnetic landscape. Compasses would spin uselessly. Animals that navigate by Earth's field, from birds to whales, would become disoriented. Radiation at the surface could increase, raising cancer risks and damaging DNA. Planes flying at high altitudes would be exposed to dangerous doses, and while Earth has survived countless reversals before, humanity has never experienced one with modern technology. The outcome is impossible to predict. Some scientists argue that the fears are exaggerated, that reversals happen slowly enough for life to adapt. After all, past flips didn't wipe out species, but others warn that in today's world, with billions dependent on technology and tightly woven global systems, the effects could be devastating in ways the fossil record cannot reveal. Civilization is uniquely vulnerable, and the magnetic field may be one of the greatest threats hiding in plain sight. And here's a chilling thought. Scientists don't know exactly why the field flips, or when the next one will happen. They can measure the weakening, they can model the flow of molten metal in the core, but the process is chaotic and unpredictable. The South Atlantic anomaly grows and shifts mysteriously, with no clear explanation. Some even speculate that patches of molten rock, sinking near the boundary of the core, could be destabilizing the geodynamo. But the truth is, our understanding of the core is limited. We cannot drill into it, we can only guess from indirect evidence. That means the future of the magnetic shield and our safety remains uncertain. What makes this story even more unnerving is that the magnetic field is not just a shield, it also connects us to forces far beyond Earth. The auroras, those breathtaking displays of light near the poles, are visible reminders of solar energy colliding with our magnetic bubble. They are beautiful, but they are also warnings. They show us that Earth is constantly under attack, constantly fending off energy that could sterilize the planet if not deflected. Our survival depends on a shield that we cannot see, cannot control, and may be slowly failing. So the question is, what happens if the field collapses? Would we adapt? Would technology rebuild fast enough to keep civilization alive? Or would we face a slow unraveling, a death by 1,000 cuts, as each solar storm chips away at the fragile systems we depend on? No one knows. And that uncertainty is what makes the magnetic shield mystery so haunting. Because in the end, the ground beneath our feet is not our only defense. Above us, stretching invisibly into space, lies a shield we never think about but cannot live without. And the evidence suggests that shield may already be weakening. Earth has survived flips and reversals before, but this time humanity is part of the equation. And if the field fails, it won't just be a geological curiosity, it will be a test of whether civilization can endure the chaos of forces we barely understand. And if you think the magnetic shield is the only danger above us, think again. Because while Earth fights to defend itself, the universe beyond is filled with killers far more sudden, far more violent, and far less forgiving. If Earth's inner forces remind us that danger lurks beneath our feet, the universe above reminds us that sometimes death comes falling from the sky. We live on a small planet orbiting a medium-sized star, in a galaxy filled with billions of stars, surrounded by an endless expanse of cosmic debris. It's easy to forget that our world is constantly moving through a shooting gallery of rocks, ice and dust, some of them harmless, others large enough to erase civilization in seconds. These are the cosmic killers, asteroids, comets and other celestial threats that strike without warning, and whose power makes earthquakes and volcanoes look tame by comparison. The most famous example is etched into our collective memory. The asteroid that ended the age of dinosaurs. 66 million years ago, a rock about 10 kilometers wide slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, creating the Chicxulub crater. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs, vaporizing rock, igniting forests across continents, and sending tsunamis racing across oceans. But the real devastation came afterward. Dust and sulfur filled the skies, blocking sunlight for years. Photosynthesis ground to a halt, plants withered, and food chains collapsed. 3 out of every 4 species on Earth were wiped out. The mighty dinosaurs, which had dominated the planet for over 150 million years, vanished almost overnight. And yet, in that destruction, opportunity emerged. Small mammals, once overshadowed, survived and thrived, eventually giving rise to humans. It's a chilling reminder that catastrophe doesn't just end eras, it reshapes them. But if you think an event like that is ancient history, think again. Earth is struck by space rocks all the time. Most are small, burning up in the atmosphere as meteors, but some are big enough to cause serious damage. In 1908, a meteor just 50 meters wide exploded over Siberia in the Tunguska event. The blast flattened over 800 square miles of forest, equivalent to a modern city. If it had hit over London, New York, or Tokyo, millions would have died instantly, and Tunguska was tiny compared to Chicxulub. Even more recently, in 2013, a meteor about 20 meters across exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia. The shockwave shattered windows, injured over 1,000 people, and reminded the world just how vulnerable we are. That was a rock no one saw coming. NASA and other space agencies track thousands of near-Earth objects, asteroids and comets, whose orbits bring them close to our planet. They've identified some of the biggest, but here's the problem: we don't know them all. Many are too small, too dark, or too fast to detect in time. Some hide in the glare of the sun, invisible until they're upon us. Every time one passes close, astronomers breathe a sigh of relief. But close calls are constant, and one day, luck will run out. The unsettling truth is that humanity doesn't yet have a reliable defense. There are projects to develop asteroid deflection systems, but none are fully ready. If we spot a killer rock years in advance, maybe we could nudge it off course. But if we see it only days before impact, there would be nothing we could do. Asteroids are not the only cosmic killers. Comets, made of ice and rock, are even more unpredictable. They travel on long, looping orbits that can take thousands of years to complete. When they finally return near the Sun, their paths can shift, sending them hurtling into the inner solar system. A comet several kilometers wide, striking Earth at far higher speeds than most asteroids, could unleash devastation on a scale beyond comprehension. Ancient records from multiple cultures describe fiery stars appearing suddenly in the sky, reminders that comets have long terrified humanity. In reality, they are one of the greatest unknown. While we can track many asteroids, a comet could appear suddenly, giving us only months of warning before impact. And then there are the rare but even deadlier cosmic events. A supernova, the explosive death of a massive star, could bathe Earth in radiation if one occurred close enough. Even more dangerous are gamma-ray bursts, concentrated beams of energy released when massive stars collapse into black holes. A single burst, if aimed at Earth, could strip away the ozone layer and expose the planet to lethal radiation. These events are rare, but the universe is vast, and rare does not mean impossible. Earth has been exposed to cosmic radiation events before, leaving traces in the fossil record. Life endured, but not without cost. What makes cosmic killers especially terrifying is their suddenness. Earthquakes and volcanoes give some warning. Climate change creeps in slowly, but an asteroid, a comet, or a burst of cosmic radiation could arrive without notice, leaving humanity with no time to prepare. Civilization, with all its power, would be as vulnerable as the dinosaurs. The difference is that we know these threats exist, and we are just beginning to develop the tools to detect and maybe even deflect them. But maybe is a fragile word when the stakes are survival itself. Some scientists argue that the universe itself is the greatest threat to life. Space is not friendly, it is not safe. It is filled with objects and energies indifferent to our existence. Earth has survived billions of years in this hostile environment, but only through luck, resilience, and chance. One unlucky impact could erase everything in a single day. And unlike in the age of dinosaurs when only nature bore witness, today's world is filled with cities, technology, and billions of lives, all of which could be gone in an instant. Yet, just as with Earth's internal dangers, cosmic killers also carry strange ironies. Without the comets that bombarded the young Earth, delivering water and organic molecules, life may never have begun here at all. The very rocks and ice that can kill us are the same that may have seeded the ingredients of life. Once again, catastrophe and creation are two sides of the same story. The same forces that destroy are the ones that allow us to exist. It's a paradox written into the history of our planet. We are here because the universe is dangerous, and we are threatened because we are here. So what does this mean for humanity? On one hand, it means vigilance. We must watch the skies, track the rocks, and build defenses if we hope to avoid the fate of the dinosaurs. On the other hand, it is a reminder of humility. We are small in a universe of unimaginable power. Our survival depends on forces far beyond our control, and all of our technology cannot yet guarantee safety from the sky. We live at the mercy of cosmic killers, and the only reason we are here at all is because, so far, Earth has been lucky, but luck runs out. And when it does, the only question will be whether humanity is prepared or whether we will simply become another layer in the fossil record. A reminder to whatever life comes next that nothing in the universe lasts forever. And if you think asteroids and comets are the only threats above us, you'd be wrong, because as terrifying as space is, some of Earth's most devastating catastrophes have not come from the stars at all, but from within the planet itself. Every species on Earth, no matter how dominant it seemed in its time, has eventually faced a moment of reckoning. Survival is never guaranteed, not even for the rulers of their age. Dinosaurs once walked the Earth for over 150 million years, yet in the space of a geological blink they were gone. But the dinosaurs weren't the first to face such a fate, nor will they be the last. In fact, Earth's history is scarred by multiple mass extinctions, catastrophic events that wiped out most life in the blink of an eye. These weren't isolated accidents, but recurring episodes that remind us just how fragile life is, and just how easily our existence could be erased. The concept of extinction is grim, but mass extinction is something far more dramatic. It isn't just a few species disappearing, it is an apocalyptic reset, an event so devastating that the majority of living things vanish across the planet. Scientists recognize 5 major mass extinctions, each reshaping the course of evolution, and each one carries chilling lessons about the dangers lurking in Earth's systems, dangers that could strike again. The first great extinction, known as the Ordovician-Silurian event about 443 million years ago, came when a sudden ice age locked the planet in glaciers, dropping sea levels and destroying habitats. Nearly 85% of marine species perished. The cause remains debated. Some suspect volcanic activity altered the atmosphere. Others suggest shifts in Earth's orbit. Whatever the trigger, the result was catastrophic. Life survived, but it was forced to start over in a changed world. The second, the Devonian extinction around 360 million years ago, unfolded more slowly but was just as deadly. Oceans stagnated, oxygen levels dropped, and toxic conditions spread through the seas. Once again, the majority of marine species were wiped out. The third extinction, however, makes both of these look minor. It is known as the Great Dying, the Permian-Triassic extinction 252 million years ago. This event is the closest Earth has ever come to being sterilized completely. Up to 96% of species disappeared, forests collapsed, oceans turned acidic, and almost every form of life was pushed to the edge of survival. Scientists believe enormous volcanic eruptions in Siberia spewed enough carbon dioxide into the atmosphere to heat the planet beyond endurance. Methane trapped in frozen seabeds may have been released, amplifying the disaster. For millions of years afterward, Earth was a barren wasteland. Survival was a miracle. The fourth extinction, the Triassic-Jurassic event 2,000 million years ago, cleared the stage for the rise of the dinosaurs. Again, massive volcanic eruptions seem to have been the trigger, destabilizing the climate and wiping out competitors. The dinosaurs thrived in the aftermath, only to meet their end in the fifth and most famous extinction 66 million years ago, when an asteroid ended their reign in spectacular fashion. Each extinction tore life down, but each also opened opportunities for new forms to rise. Without them, humans would not exist. We are children of catastrophe, products of chance, survivors of a world that has been reset time and time again. But here is the unsettling truth. Scientists warn that we may be living in the midst of a sixth extinction right now. Unlike those of the past, this one is not caused by an asteroid or a supervolcano. It is caused by us. Human activity, deforestation, pollution, climate change, and overhunting is driving species to disappear at rates hundreds of times faster than normal. Coral reefs, home to vast ecosystems, are bleaching and dying. Rainforests, the lungs of the Earth, are shrinking daily. Large mammals like elephants, rhinos, and tigers face extinction from poaching and habitat loss. Birds vanish from the skies. Insects decline quietly but ominously, and entire ecosystems unravel. The warning signs are everywhere, and they echo the patterns of past mass extinctions: rapid environmental change, loss of biodiversity, and collapse of key systems. If history has taught us anything, it is that extinction is not just about losing animals or plants, it is about the collapse of the interconnected web that sustains life. When species vanish, ecosystems weaken, When ecosystems weaken, food chains break. When food chains break, survival itself is threatened. Humans may imagine themselves immune, but we are as dependent on that web as any creature. If pollinators disappear, crops fail. If oceans collapse, billions lose their food supply. And once collapse begins, it spreads quickly. The most chilling part is that, unlike past extinctions, this one is happening in real time, and we can see it unfolding. We are witnesses, and we are participants. And unlike asteroids or volcanoes, this catastrophe is one we could stop, if we chose to. But so far the trajectory continues downward, and many scientists argue that we are too late to prevent the sixth extinction from accelerating. What's terrifying is that mass extinctions don't need to wipe out everything to change the course of history. They just need to tip the balance. A reduction in biodiversity can leave Earth permanently altered, reshaping evolution for millions of years. In every case, survival is selective, favoring creatures that can adapt quickly or endure harsh conditions. In the Great Dying, small burrowing animals survived while giant reptiles perished. In the age of dinosaurs, small mammals endured in the shadow. Today, the question is, if the sixth extinction continues, what will survive? And will humans be among the survivors, or will we be just another casualty of our own making? The paradox of extinction is that it is both destruction and renewal. It clears the stage, erases the old order, and makes room for something new. But renewal takes millions of years, and for the species caught in the collapse, there is no second chance. We like to think of ourselves as different, intelligent, powerful, capable of mastering nature. But extinction doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about intelligence or technology. It comes when systems fail, and history shows that systems always fail eventually. The unsettling question is whether humanity is writing its own extinction story. Will we be the cause of the next great reset? Or will we find a way to break the cycle, to survive the catastrophe we've created? Past extinctions remind us of two truths. Survival is rare, and survival is possible. Life endures, but it does not endure unchanged. If humanity does survive, it will not be the same humanity we know today. It will be reshaped, perhaps diminished, but perhaps stronger. Extinction is the shadow that hangs over life on Earth. It has happened before. It is happening again. And one way or another, it will happen in the future. The only question is whether we will face it as victims or as survivors. And if you think extinction is the greatest danger Earth holds, think again. Because beyond extinctions lies an even deeper mystery. The rise and fall of civilizations themselves, fragile creations of humans that can vanish just as easily as the species they depend on. Every empire, no matter how powerful, believes it will last forever. The Roman emperors once thought their dominion was eternal. The great dynasties of Egypt carved their names into stone to defy time itself. The Mayans built vast cities in the jungles, confident they would endure, yet all of them crumbled. Civilizations rise on fragile foundations, and history shows us they fall just as quickly. What makes these collapses so haunting is not just that they happened, but that they often came at the height of power, when their people thought they were invincible. Beneath the surface of every thriving society lurks weakness, ecological strain, political corruption, natural disasters, or simple overconfidence. And once those cracks widen, collapse becomes inevitable. Take Rome, the empire that defined Western civilization for centuries. At its peak, it controlled vast territories from Britain to North Africa, with roads, aqueducts, armies, and wealth unmatched in its time. Yet Rome's fall did not come from a single dramatic blow. It came slowly, through a series of crises that eroded its strength. Invasions by barbarian tribes strained its armies. Corruption and greed hollowed out its leadership. Economic instability and overexpansion stretched its resources thin. Meanwhile, natural events, plagues, famines, even climate shifts, weakened the empire further. By the time the final collapse came in the 5th century, Rome had already been dying for generations. Its fall was not just the end of an empire, but the end of an entire world order. But Rome was not unique. The Mayan civilization in Central America flourished for centuries, building advanced cities with astronomy, mathematics, and architecture that rivaled the Old World. Yet, by the 9th century, Many of their great cities were abandoned. Archaeologists now believe that climate change, severe droughts spanning decades, played a major role. Without water, agriculture collapsed. With agriculture gone, cities starved. Wars broke out over dwindling resources. The collapse was not sudden, but it was absolute. The jungles reclaimed their temples, and what had seemed eternal was erased in silence. Even more mysterious is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the earliest advanced societies thriving over 4,000 years ago in what is now Pakistan and India. With cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, they built plumbing, trade networks and organized urban centers long before Rome or Greece. And yet this great civilization vanished. Some point to climate shifts that dried up rivers. Others suggest invasions or disease. Whatever the cause, a society that once dominated its region disappeared so completely that its language and culture remain undeciphered to this day. It is a chilling reminder of how easily a thriving civilization can vanish into obscurity, leaving behind only ruins and question. Civilizations do not need centuries to collapse. Sometimes disaster strikes in a single blow. Consider Pompeii, a prosperous Roman city in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. In the year 79 AD, Vesuvius erupted, burying the city in ash and freezing its people in their final moments. Life ended in an instant, preserved forever in tragedy. Natural disasters can undo centuries of progress overnight, and no empire is immune. Imagine modern megacities facing a similar fate: a volcanic eruption, a tsunami, or a massive earthquake striking without mercy. Our illusion of permanence would shatter just as quickly as it did in Pompeii. What makes collapse so unsettling is how often it comes with warning signs that go ignored. In nearly every case, societies overextended themselves, consuming more than their environment could provide. They exhausted soils, cut down forests, polluted rivers, and assumed resources would last forever. In truth, they were sowing the seeds of their downfall. The parallel to today is impossible to ignore. Our global civilization is larger and more connected than any before it, but it is also more fragile. We are consuming resources at unprecedented rates, destabilizing the climate, and placing billions in cities vulnerable to rising seas and natural disasters. The collapse of Rome or the Mayans happened in isolation. If our civilization falls, it will be on a global scale, but collapse doesn't always mean annihilation. Sometimes it means transformation. The fall of Rome led to the Dark Ages in Europe, but from that darkness came renewal. New kingdoms, new ideas, and eventually the Renaissance. The fall of one order often clears the way for another. The question is whether that renewal comes quickly, or whether humanity must endure centuries of hardship first. Collapse is not the end of life, but it is the end of a way of life, and the transition is never gentle. In many ways, modern society is more vulnerable than those of the past. Our dependence on technology, global trade, and fragile infrastructure means that disruptions can spread rapidly. A collapse in one part of the world can ripple across continents. A financial crash in one country can destabilize markets everywhere. A pandemic can halt travel, cripple economies, and expose the fragility of global systems. We saw this in 2020 with COVID-19. A virus brought modern civilization to its knees, grounding flights, silencing cities, and killing millions. That was not a true collapse, but it was a glimpse of how quickly our systems can unravel. The haunting part is that civilizations rarely see their end coming. The Romans still believed they ruled the world even as their empire fractured. The Mayans built temples even as drought starved their people. The great kingdoms of Mesopotamia thought themselves eternal, yet their names are now whispered only in history books. Collapse is never obvious in the moment. It creeps, it erodes, it builds silently until one day the foundation gives way, and when it does, no amount of pride or power can stop it. So the question is not whether civilizations collapse. History shows they always do. The question is when and how. Will our own world end slowly through gradual erosion of resources and growing inequality? Or will it fall suddenly through war, climate catastrophe, or a natural disaster? Either way, the lesson of history is clear. No society, no matter how advanced, is immune. And yet collapse also carries a strange hope. The chance for renewal, for a different order to rise from the ashes. The story of civilizations on the brink is ultimately the story of humanity itself. We build, we grow, we believe in permanence, and then we fall. But out of each fall, something new emerges. The danger is real, the cycle relentless, and the stakes higher than ever. And just as empires of the past could not escape their fate, we may not escape ours. The only choice we have is whether we face it blindly, or whether we learn from the ruins left behind. And if you think the fall of civilizations is terrifying, remember this. Sometimes the threats don't just come from nature or environment, but from forces within humanity itself. Conflicts, wars, and choices that shape whether we endure or vanish. If Earth itself threatens us with disasters from below and above, humanity has proven time and time again that sometimes our greatest danger comes not from nature, but from ourselves. For as long as we have walked this planet, we have waged wars, battles for land, for resources, for pride, for ideology. And while volcanoes, earthquakes, and asteroids can devastate cities and inns, it is often human conflict that leaves the deepest scars on civilization. Because when humanity turns its weapons inward, the destruction is not just physical, it is psychological, cultural, and generational. Wars reshape borders, erase histories, and shatter the illusion that our species is capable of unity. They remind us that even if Earth were perfectly safe, we might still be our own undoing. Consider the sheer scale of devastation in the 20th century alone. World War I, once called the war to end all wars, killed millions and introduced industrialized slaughter on a scale the world had never seen before. Trenches stretched across Europe, filled with soldiers who faced poison gas, machine guns, and artillery that turned entire landscapes into wastelands. By the time it ended, millions were dead, empires were shattered, and yet, it was only a prelude to something worse. Barely 2 decades later, World War II erupted, consuming the globe in an inferno of destruction. Cities burned, civilians starved, armies clashed across continents. The Holocaust revealed humanity's capacity for cruelty, while battles like Stalingrad turned entire cities into graves. By 1945, the war had killed over 70 million people, more than any natural disaster in history. And then came Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the first and only use of nuclear weapons in war, showing the world that humanity now possessed the power to annihilate itself in an instant. The Cold War that followed was less about direct conflict than about the shadow of annihilation. For decades, the world lived under the threat of mutually assured destruction, where a single miscalculation could unleash nuclear fire capable of ending civilization. Children practiced hiding under desks, governments built bunkers, and entire nations lived in quiet terror. The weapons still exist, and the threat remains. Even today, thousands of nuclear warheads sit ready, capable of unleashing a catastrophe greater than any asteroid impact. Unlike volcanoes or earthquakes, this danger is entirely of our own making, a sword we hold above our own heads, waiting for it to fall. But it isn't just the great wars of history that show our fragility. Smaller conflicts, civil wars and revolutions reveal how quickly societies can unravel from within. The Rwandan genocide in the 1990s saw neighbours turn against neighbours, killing hundreds of thousands in a matter of weeks. The collapse of Yugoslavia unleashed ethnic conflicts that shattered communities and displaced millions. Civil wars in Syria, Yemen, and other nations continue to this day, leaving cities reduced to rubble and generations growing up knowing nothing but violence. These conflicts prove that civilization doesn't need an asteroid to collapse. It only needs distrust, division, and hate. The most terrifying aspect of human conflict is how it evolves alongside technology. In the past, wars were fought with swords and arrows. Then came cannons, rifles, and machine guns. Now wars are fought with drones, cyber attacks, and weapons of mass destruction. Imagine what future wars could bring as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and space-based weapons become realities. Wars of the future may not just destroy cities, they could target entire populations at the genetic level, collapse digital infrastructures, or even wage battles in orbit above our heads. Humanity's ingenuity, which once gave us fire and agriculture, also gives us tools of unimaginable destruction. But war is not only about weapons, it is about what it reveals, that beneath our technology and progress, humanity is fragile, divided, and easily swayed by fear and ambition. Wars often begin with small sparks, a dispute over territory, an assassination, a clash of ideologies, but those sparks ignite into infernos that consume millions of lives. Leaders promise glory, nations rally around pride, and ordinary people are swept into violence that they never asked for. In the end, war does not just kill bodies, it kills trust, stability, and the very idea of safety. And here is where the fragility of humanity becomes most obvious. Even in times of peace, the seeds of conflict are always there. Scarcity of resources, inequality, and climate stress all fuel tension. As seas rise and droughts spread, wars over water, food, and habitable land may become inevitable. History shows that humans rarely share scarcity peacefully. Instead, we fight over what remains. Some scientists and political leaders already warn of future climate wars, conflicts not over ideology but over survival itself. When nations begin to fall because of drought or flood, others will be dragged into the chaos. The wars of tomorrow may not be fought over pride or politics, but over whether millions live or die. What makes this even more unsettling is that humanity's wars never truly end. Even when treaties are signed, the scars remain. Generations grow up carrying trauma. Cities may rebuild, but memories of violence linger in families and cultures. Trust is harder to restore than buildings. That fragility, the ease with which divisions linger and fester, makes us vulnerable to repeating the same mistakes again and again. We rebuild after war, but the cracks remain, ready to split open at the next moment of crisis. Some optimists argue that war has declined in scale, that modern global connections and institutions make a third world war unlikely. Yet history warns us never to be complacent. Before World War I, Europe believed peace was stable, bound together by trade and diplomacy. Within months, the continent was consumed by bloodshed. Before World War II, people thought the horror of the First War was too great to repeat, and yet it happened again, even worse than before. To believe that humanity has outgrown war is to ignore the lessons carved into history. The fragility of humanity lies in this cycle. We build, we fight, we destroy, we rebuild, and then we repeat. Unlike earthquakes or volcanoes, this cycle is preventable, yet we cannot seem to stop it. Our intelligence gives us the ability to imagine peace, but our instincts, ambitions, and fears pull us back into conflict. The greatest danger is not that humanity will face war again, but that we will face it with tools powerful enough to erase ourselves entirely. Nuclear weapons, bioweapons, and AI-driven warfare are not just possibilities. They are here, waiting for the wrong moment, the wrong leader, or the wrong miscalculation. In the end, war is both a symptom and a cause of humanity's fragility. It comes from our divisions, and it deepens them. It comes from our fears, and it multiplies them. It comes from our pride, and it destroys the very civilizations that pride sought to build. Every war, from the smallest conflict to the largest world war, reminds us that civilization is not permanent. It is fragile, vulnerable, and always one decision away from collapse. And yet, just like the Earth itself, war carries paradoxes. Out of destruction, new orders emerge. Out of chaos, new technologies and systems are born. The modern world, with its institutions and connections, was forged in the fires of global conflict. But if the next great war comes, the price may be too high for any rebirth to follow. So, the question is, can humanity break the cycle? Can we learn from our history, or are we doomed to repeat it until one war finally ends us all? The truth is, no one knows. What we do know is that the fragility of humanity is not only in our bodies or our environment, but in our choices. And history shows we do not always choose wisely. And if you think human conflict is terrifying, remember this. Even when wars end and civilizations rebuild, there are threats far greater than our divisions. Threats that come not from humanity's hands, but from the Earth itself, waiting quietly beneath the waves. When people think of Earth's greatest threats, they often look up at the sky or down at the restless ground. But some of the most terrifying dangers are hidden in plain sight, in the vast blue expanses that cover more than 70% of our planet. The oceans, which seem so calm and endless, hold secrets that can change the fate of civilizations. They are beautiful, mysterious, and essential for life, yet they are also unpredictable, destructive, and deadly. The truth is, the oceans are not just a backdrop to Earth's story. They are a force of their own, capable of reshaping the planet in ways most of us cannot imagine. On the surface, oceans sustain us. They regulate climate, feed billions, and provide routes for trade and exploration. But beneath the waves lies a world of hidden threats. Tsunamis, for example, are among the most sudden and devastating disasters Earth can produce. Triggered by undersea earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or even landslides, these massive walls of water can cross entire oceans at jet speed and strike without mercy. In 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami killed more than 200,000 people across multiple countries. Entire communities vanished in minutes. In 2011, Japan was devastated by another tsunami, one that swept inland, destroyed towns, and caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. These are not isolated tragedies. They are warning. As long as Earth's tectonic plates grind and shift beneath the sea, tsunamis will remain an ever-present threat. But tsunamis are only one of the ocean's weapons. The seas themselves are rising, slowly but relentlessly, as the climate warms and glaciers melt. For millions living along coastlines, this creeping disaster is no less dangerous than an earthquake or an asteroid. Cities like Miami, Jakarta, and Shanghai already face flooding with every storm surge. Entire island nations are watching their land disappear beneath the waves. The danger isn't just the water itself, but what it means for civilization. Mass migrations, food shortages, economic collapse, and conflicts over shrinking habitable land. Rising seas are a reminder that oceans are not passive. They respond to what we do, and they have the power to erase the boundaries we cling to. Even more frightening are the secrets locked deep within the oceans. Trapped in frozen sediments along the seafloor lies methane hydrate, a vast reserve of gas that, if released, could transform the climate overnight. Scientists call it the clathrate gun hypothesis, the idea that sudden warming could destabilize these frozen stores, releasing methane into the atmosphere. Methane is far more potent than carbon dioxide, and a rapid release could trigger runaway climate change. Some researchers believe events like this may have contributed to past mass extinctions. The oceans may look calm, but beneath them lies a loaded weapon, waiting for the right conditions to pull the trigger. Then there is the mystery of the deep itself. We have mapped the surface of Mars better than the depths of our own oceans. More than 80% of the seafloor remains unexplored, a realm of darkness and pressure where strange creatures thrive in alien conditions. But alongside the beauty of this hidden world are sounds and signals that scientists still cannot fully explain. Strange bloops recorded in the deep unexplained rumbles, and shifting patterns hint at processes we barely understand. Could they be natural? Almost certainly, but the ocean guards its secrets well, and the fact that we know so little about the world beneath our feet is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Oceans are also the engines of storms, powering hurricanes and typhoons that devastate coastlines with wind and flood. These storms are growing stronger as the planet warms, fueled by rising sea temperatures. Every year, millions face destruction at the hands of cyclones that tear apart homes and economies. Unlike earthquakes or asteroids, these storms are predictable, but that doesn't make them less destructive. In fact, their slow advance can bring dread long before the first winds arrive. And as they grow more powerful, fueled by the energy-warming seas, the line between natural disaster and planetary warning becomes impossible to ignore. Yet perhaps the most unsettling part of the oceans is how much humanity depends on them. Billions rely on fish as a primary source of protein. Vast shipping lanes carry the goods that fuel the global economy. Trade, travel, and survival all depend on stable seas, but overfishing, pollution, and acidification are weakening this stability. Coral reefs, the nurseries of the ocean, are dying at alarming rates. Entire ecosystems collapse as species vanish. The oceans are turning against us, not because they want to, but because we have pushed them too far. When they weaken, we weaken. When they collapse, civilization feels the impact. And let's not forget the power of undersea volcanoes and earthquakes, many of which remain hidden until they erupt. Entire ridges of volcanoes lie beneath the oceans, erupting with forces we rarely notice until tsunamis or plumes remind us of their existence. Some scientists warn that massive undersea landslides could one day trigger tsunamis that dwarf anything we have seen before. These are not just possibilities, they are inevitabilities, given enough time. The paradox of the oceans is the same paradox that runs through all of Earth's forces. They are both our greatest ally and our greatest threat. They gave us life, regulating climate and providing resources, but they can also take life away with a single surge, storm, or shift. They are vast enough to seem eternal, yet fragile enough to change dramatically in response to small shifts in temperature or chemistry. Humanity has always underestimated the sea. Sailors who once feared the horizon believing monsters lurked beyond may not have been entirely wrong. The monsters are real. They are just not creatures of myth, but forces of water, pressure, and storm. The oceans remind us of a truth we often ignore. Earth's greatest threats are not always the ones we can see. Sometimes they are the ones hiding in plain sight, beneath the waves that look so calm on a sunny day. They are not silent, but we rarely listen. And when they finally speak, they do so with a roar that can drown nations. The oceans are vast, mysterious, and indifferent. They do not care about our cities, our economies, or our pride. They will rise when they rise. They will surge when they surge. And when they do, humanity will be reminded once again that survival is never guaranteed. And if you think the oceans are the final mystery, think again. Because beneath the surface, buried in the planet's long history, are ancient stories of collapse and survival that may hold the greatest warnings of all. For as long as humans have walked the earth, we have been telling stories about the world around us. Floods, fires, collapsing skies, and vanishing lands. These tales echo across cultures, passed down through generations, sometimes dismissed as myth, but often rooted in something far more real. Because hidden inside legends and ruins are warnings, fragments of memory from times when civilizations faced catastrophe. While science now gives us data and models, the stories of our ancestors remind us that they too lived under constant threat, that they too saw the earth turn against them, and that they left behind clues we would be foolish to ignore. Take, for example, the ancient flood myths that exist in nearly every culture, from the story of Noah in the Bible to the Mesopotamian tale of Gilgamesh. From Hindu texts ascribing Manu surviving a great deluge to Native American legends of waters rising to cover the land, flood stories are everywhere. Were they merely symbolic, cautionary tales about human hubris? Or do they preserve cultural memory of real events? Times when seas rose or rivers overflowed, swallowing entire settlements. Geologists point to the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, when melting glaciers sent oceans surging higher, drowning coastlines and reshaping continents. For those who lived through it, the world truly ended and their survival became myth. What we now call climate change is in many ways a repetition of a story as old as humanity itself, one we've already recorded in our most ancient texts. Then there are the ruins, silent stone warnings from civilizations long gone. The temples of Angkor in Cambodia, once the center of a sprawling empire, now reclaimed by jungle, tell of a society that depended on complex water systems. When drought struck, the system failed and the empire unraveled. The cliff dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans in the American Southwest show the same pattern. People abandoning once thriving cities when drought turned survival into a desperate struggle. And in the Mediterranean, the collapse of the Bronze Age around 1100 and 1200 BC remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Entire kingdoms fell, trade networks collapsed, and literacy disappeared for centuries. Some blame invasions, others point to climate shifts, earthquakes, or volcanic eruptions. Whatever the cause, the lesson is stark. Complex societies, even when advanced for their time, can vanish in a single lifetime. What makes these stories so compelling is not just their drama, but their similarity. Across continents, across millennia, humans faced the same threats: floods, droughts, famine, earthquakes, wars, and their survival often depended on luck as much as ingenuity. The fact that so many cultures share themes of deluge, fire, or destruction suggests that these were not coincidences, but shared experiences. And yet, instead of listening, modern civilization often dismisses these tales as superstition. By ignoring them, we risk repeating mistakes already made countless times before. One of the most powerful examples lies beneath the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini, once home to a flourishing Minoan civilization. Around 1600 BC, the island erupted in one of the largest volcanic explosions in recorded history. The blast was so powerful it likely triggered tsunamis that struck Crete, destroying Minoan cities. Ash may have darkened skies across the Mediterranean. Some even believe this event inspired the myth of Atlantis, a great civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Whether Atlantis was real or not, the destruction of Santorini is undeniable, a reminder that even great cultures can vanish overnight, leaving behind only fragments and myths that future generations struggle to interpret. But not all ancient warnings are catastrophic. Some are practical, born from experience. In Japan, ancient stone markers stand along the coast, carved centuries ago with messages like, Do not build your homes below this point. These were placed after tsunamis devastated villages. Warnings from survivors to their descendants. Many were ignored as modern towns grew, built closer to the sea for convenience. In 2011, when a massive tsunami struck Japan, some of those towns were destroyed. The villages that honored the markers, staying above the ancient line, survived. It is one of the clearest examples of how ancestral knowledge, if remembered, can save lives even thousands of years later. Ancient cultures also understood cycles in ways we are only now rediscovering. The Mayans tracked celestial patterns with extraordinary precision, linking them to cycles of agriculture, weather, and disaster. Some of their inscriptions suggest awareness of long-term shifts that affected crops and rainfall. The Egyptians recorded years when the Nile failed to flood, leading to famine and collapse. Chinese chronicles documented strange celestial events, droughts and floods, some of which align with geological and astronomical evidence of volcanic eruptions or solar activity. These records, preserved over generations, form a long-term memory of Earth's volatility, a memory modern civilization often lacks because we think only in decades or centuries. The haunting question is whether we are listening to these ancient warnings. Today we have more data than any generation before us, yet we also suffer from a kind of amnesia. We build cities on floodplains despite flood myths warning of rising water. So we rely on fragile agriculture despite past civilizations crumbling when crops failed. We trust technology to protect us, forgetting that the people of Rome, the Mayans, the Indus Valley, and countless others also believed they were secure until they weren't. The ruins scattered across the planet are not just remnants of the past. They are messages, silent but urgent, telling us what happens when we overreach, when we ignore balance, when we forget that Earth does not bend to human ambition. What makes these forgotten warnings even more unsettling is how they echo the threats we face now. Rising seas mirror the ancient floods. Prolonged droughts reflect the struggles of the Mayans and Puebloans. Volcanic eruptions and earthquakes remain as unpredictable as they were for the Minoans or the people of Pompeii. We live with the same Earth, facing the same dangers, yet we believe our technology makes us immune. In truth, it only makes us more dependent on fragile systems that can collapse even faster than ancient ones. Perhaps the greatest lesson from ancient clues is humility. For every empire that rose, for every city that thrived, there was always a fall. The survivors were those who adapted, who remembered, who listened to the warnings etched into stone or preserved in stories. Those who ignored them vanished. Modern humanity stands at the same crossroads. We can treat myths and ruins as curiosities, or we can recognize them as the hard-earned wisdom of civilizations that face the same planet we now inhabit. Their voices may be faint, carried across centuries, but their message is clear. Earth will always test us, and survival depends not on denial but on respect. The ruins, the myths, the forgotten warnings, they are not just history, they are mirrors, showing us the future we may face if we do not listen. They remind us that we are not the first to face disaster, nor will we be the last. The only question is whether we will be remembered as survivors who heeded the past, or as another forgotten civilization whose warnings went unheeded. And if you think ancient stories are only about the past, think again, because some of the most chilling warnings are not buried in myths or ruins, but written in the very climate and systems of today, shifting before our eyes in ways eerily familiar to those who came before. If there is one threat that feels both familiar and unstoppable, it is the chaos of the climate. Unlike asteroids, supervolcanoes, or magnetic reversals, climate change is not a sudden shock from outside. It is a slow, creeping transformation, the kind that reshapes civilizations over centuries and generations. Yet slow does not mean safe. History shows us that climate has toppled empires, erased cultures and forced entire populations to flee. And today, it is not just repeating itself, it is accelerating, driven by humanity's own actions unfolding in real time before our eyes. The future of our species may depend not on wars or disasters from the skies, but on whether we can endure the chaos of the climate we ourselves have set in motion. To understand the danger, we need only look back at the past. Around 4,000 years ago, the Akkadian Empire, one of the world's earliest great civilizations, collapsed after a devastating drought. Fields withered, food supplies dwindled, and cities were abandoned. The same pattern appears again and again. The Mayans faced centuries of erratic rainfall that destabilized their empire. The Khmer of Angkor built an intricate water system, but when monsoons failed, their cities fell silent. Even in Europe, the so-called Little Ice Age between the 14th and 19th centuries brought famine, conflict and disease as crops failed and winters grew harsher. Climate has always been a silent player in the rise and fall of civilizations, a force far beyond human control. But what makes today different is speed. In the past, climate shifts unfolded over centuries or millennia, giving people time to adapt. Now, we are watching the planet change within decades. Ice sheets that took tens of thousands of years to form are melting in a single human lifetime. Seas are rising faster than coastal cities can defend. Heat waves are breaking records year after year, while wildfires consume landscapes once thought safe. Storms grow stronger, droughts grow longer, and the seasons themselves are shifting. Humanity is experiencing in a single century the kind of transformation that once reshaped the world over eons. The cause, of course, is no mystery. By burning fossil fuels, cutting forests, and releasing greenhouse gases, we have thickened the blanket of carbon dioxide that traps heat in the atmosphere. The numbers are staggering. Carbon levels are now higher than at any time in at least the last 800,000 years, and they continue to rise. This is not just a statistic, it is a countdown, because every fraction of a degree in warming brings new risks. Rising seas that threaten cities, failing crops that starve millions, and ecosystems that collapse under stress. The Earth will survive, it always has, but the question is whether civilization as we know it can survive with it. One of the greatest dangers of climate chaos is how it feeds on itself. Melting ice not only raises sea levels, but also removes reflective surfaces that once bounced sunlight back into space, causing further warming. Thawing permafrost releases methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide, accelerating the process even more. Forests that once absorbed carbon are burning, turning from allies into enemies. Each feedback loop tightens the spiral, and once set in motion, these processes are nearly impossible to stop. Climate change is not a single event but a chain reaction, one that grows more unstoppable the longer it continues. The human consequences are already unfolding. In parts of Africa and the Middle East, prolonged droughts have forced millions from their homes, fueling conflict and migration. In South Asia, rising seas threaten to flood entire nations like Bangladesh, displacing tens of millions. In the United States, hurricanes and wildfires cause billions in damage each year, straining resources and communities. The refugee crises of the future may not be caused by war alone, but by climate families fleeing rising waters, failed harvests, and unlivable heat. Entire regions may become uninhabitable, not because of bombs or battles, but because the air itself becomes too hot to survive in without shelter. What makes climate chaos especially terrifying is that it magnifies every other threat. Scarce resources spark wars, failed harvests fuel unrest, flooded cities trigger economic collapse. Pandemics spread more easily when populations are displaced. Climate change is not just one risk, it is the stage upon which every other crisis plays out, making them all more dangerous. In this way, it is the most insidious threat of all, not because it arrives suddenly, but because it quietly undermines the systems we depend on until they break. And yet, humanity still struggles to respond. Political divisions, economic interests, and short-term thinking delay action even as the evidence mounts. While some nations push for renewable energy and global cooperation, others double down on fossil fuels, chasing profit in the face of disaster. The irony is painful. We know the danger, we have the technology to reduce it, yet we hesitate, trapped in cycles of denial and delay. Future generations may look back not with pity, but with disbelief that we saw the storm coming and chose to argue while the waters rose. Still, there is another side to this story: resilience. Humans are survivors, and we have endured countless trials before. Renewable energy is growing faster than ever, and technological advances offer hope for adaptation and mitigation. Cities are redesigning themselves to withstand floods, droughts, and heat. Communities are learning from past disasters, rebuilding stronger and preparing for the next. But whether this will be enough remains uncertain, because survival does not mean victory. It means enduring hardship, loss, and change on a scale we may not yet be ready to face. The most haunting truth of climate chaos is that it is not distant. It is not a story for future generations. It is here now, shaping our lives in ways big and small. Every fire, every flood, Every heat wave is part of the same unfolding story. And while Earth has endured worse, the real question is whether we can endure it with our civilization intact. Perhaps the greatest lesson is humility. We cannot control the climate, only influence it, and we cannot bend Earth to our will without consequences. The ancient warnings carved in myth and stone told us this long ago, but we ignored them. Now the test is ours. Will we adapt, change, and survive, or will we follow the path of past civilizations, undone by forces too vast to control? The chaos of climate is not just a danger, it is a mirror, showing us who we are and how we choose to face the trials of our time. And as overwhelming as it feels, the story is not finished. The ending depends not on Earth, but on us. And if you think climate is the final word in Earth's threats, remember, while the skies warm and the seas rise, there are forces beneath the surface, hidden in silence, that could still erupt with power beyond anything climate alone could bring. Beneath the ground we walk on lies one of the most terrifying forces on the planet. A power so immense that even the greatest storms or the most destructive earthquakes pale in comparison. Most volcanoes we know, those that erupt with fiery rivers of lava, that cover towns in ash, that shake the skies with thunder, are dangerous enough. But hidden in certain parts of the world are far greater threats, monsters so vast and so rare that they erupt only once in hundreds of thousands of years. These are supervolcanoes, and when they awaken they do not just destroy cities or nations. They can alter the entire planet, plunging the world into darkness and rewriting the course of life itself. The idea of a supervolcano sounds like something pulled from science fiction, but it is a very real danger. A supervolcano is not defined by how tall its mountain is, but by the size of the eruption it can produce. To qualify, it must release more than 1,000 cubic kilometers of material in a single blast, thousands of times more than the most infamous eruptions in human history. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it buried Pompeii and Herculaneum, freezing those cities in time beneath ash. When Krakatoa exploded in 1883, the sound was heard thousands of miles away, and the skies darkened across the globe. But even those legendary eruptions were small compared to what a true supervolcano can do. One of the most famous supervolcanoes lies in the heart of the United States, Yellowstone. Today, Yellowstone is celebrated for its geysers, hot springs, and stunning landscapes. But those features are only the visible signs of the massive magma chamber lurking below. Scientists studying Yellowstone estimate that its last major eruption, about 640,000 years ago, was a cataclysm that blanketed much of North America in ash. If it erupted again at full scale, it could devastate agriculture, block sunlight for years, and push humanity to the brink of collapse. And while scientists stress that such an eruption is unlikely in our lifetimes, the fact that it is even possible should make us pause. Because Yellowstone is not alone. Across the world, other supervolcanoes wait in silence. The Toba caldera in Indonesia erupted around 74,000 years ago in one of the largest volcanic events known. Some scientists believe it caused a volcanic winter so severe that it nearly drove humanity to extinction, reducing the global population to only a few thousand survivors. Lake Taupo in New Zealand has erupted multiple times in the past, with one explosion around 26,000 years ago sending ash and debris into the atmosphere and leaving a mark visible in ice cores across the planet. Even in Italy, beneath the surface near Naples, lies the Campi Flegrei caldera, an area of restless ground and gas emissions that has long worried scientists. These are not distant curiosities. They are real, measurable threats that have shaped the history of life and could do so again. The destructive power of a supervolcano lies not just in lava or explosions, but in what follows. The true killer is ash and gas. When a supervolcano erupts, it can spew billions of tons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. This gas reflects sunlight, cooling the planet in what is called a volcanic winter. Crops fail, ecosystems collapse, and starvation spreads. The ash itself, fine and suffocating, can cover entire continents, poisoning water, destroying infrastructure, and choking the air. Unlike earthquakes or tsunamis, whose destruction is immediate, a supervolcano's aftermath can last years, even decades, slowly grinding down human civilization. And unlike an asteroid strike which comes from above, this is a threat that comes from below, from the very body of the Earth itself. What makes supervolcanoes so unsettling is how little we can do about them. With storms we can build stronger shelters. With rising seas we can construct barriers. Even with asteroids, humanity has begun experimenting with ways to deflect them. But when it comes to a supervolcano, there is no prevention, no way to stop the eruption once pressure builds to the breaking point. The best we can do is monitor, watching for signs of swelling ground, rising temperatures, or shifting gases that hint at magma movement. Yellowstone, for example, is one of the most closely monitored geological sites on Earth. But monitoring is not control. We may know when danger grows, but we cannot change the outcome. And yet, humanity has already felt the brush of these forces. When Mount Tambora erupted in 1815, it was not technically a supervolcano, but its eruption was large enough to cause what became known as the year without a summer. Across the world, temperatures dropped, crops failed in Europe, leading to famine and unrest. Snow fell in June in New England. Dark skies inspired art and literature, from haunting paintings to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That was only a fraction of what a true supervolcano could unleash. Tambora killed tens of thousands directly, but its indirect effects reached millions. Now imagine that destruction on a scale 10 or 20 times larger, lasting not for months but for years. Supervolcanoes also remind us of how fragile our modern world is. Our global food system relies on consistent growing seasons. Our supply chains depend on clear skies for travel and transport. Our power grids and communication systems are vulnerable to disruption from ash and cold. In a world already strained by climate change, a sudden volcanic winter could trigger a collapse unlike anything in recorded history. The frightening part is that it would not matter how wealthy or powerful a nation is. Ash does not care about borders. Sulfur clouds do not stop at checkpoint. The effects would be global, indiscriminate, and unavoidable. Some scientists argue that humanity should be preparing not for if, but for when. Building food reserves, developing crops that can survive in cold, and diversifying energy sources are all steps that could make the difference between collapse and survival. But much like climate change, preparation often takes a backseat to short-term concerns. We think in years, while the Earth moves in millennia, and yet, the Earth only needs a single eruption to remind us how small we truly are. The silence of supervolcanoes is what makes them most terrifying. They do not roar often. They do not remind us of their power with frequent activity. They sit quietly for hundreds of thousands of years, letting civilizations rise, letting humanity forget. And then, without warning, they awaken. The very ground beneath us, which feels so stable, can turn against us in a moment. This is why the threat feels almost mythical, as though it belongs to legends of fire and darkness. But myths are often born from truth, and in this case the truth is still here, waiting beneath our feet. The fire below is not our enemy. It is the same force that shaped the continents, that created fertile soils, that gave rise to the landscapes we love. But like every force of nature, it does not serve us. It simply exists, powerful, indifferent, and inevitable. And if humanity is to endure, we must remember that survival has always meant respecting forces larger than ourselves. Supervolcanoes are not the most frequent threat, but they may be the most final. And if you think the dangers of Earth stop with the ground beneath us, you'd be mistaken, because even as the fire below waits to awaken, there are forces above and beyond, cosmic threats from space, that remind us we are not only at the mercy of our planet, but of the universe itself. From the violent birth of Earth in fire and chaos, to the restless oceans, shifting climate, and hidden fires below, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: our planet is not a safe, steady backdrop for human life. It is alive, unpredictable, and indifferent to whether we survive or not. Every age of history, every myth of destruction, every ruin left behind, is a reminder that Earth is a force far greater than us. We are not masters of this world. We are passengers, clinging to its surface, vulnerable to its storms, quakes, and eruptions, hoping we can endure whatever it throws at us next. The most unsettling part is that the greatest dangers often come without warning. Civilizations before us thought they would last forever, only to vanish in a generation when rivers dried, when the sky darkened, when the seas rose. We have technology, science, satellites, and global communication, but none of these shield us from the planet itself. At best, they buy us time. At worst, they give us a false sense of security, making us believe we are untouchable. The truth is harsher. Earth has erased species stronger than us. It has toppled empires more resilient than ours, and it will keep testing us for as long as we exist. But buried within these warnings is also something else, a strange kind of hope. Humanity is still here. Our ancestors endured floods, droughts, volcanic winters, and ice ages. They adapted, they migrated, they rebuilt. They left us not only their ruins, but their stories, clues meant to guide us when the Earth turns volatile again. If we choose to listen, if we choose to learn, we may yet have a chance to survive the next great trial. Survival is not guaranteed, but it has always been possible. The story of Earth is not just one of destruction, it is also one of resilience. Still, to survive, we must abandon the illusion of control. We cannot silence the oceans. We cannot stop the magnetic field from weakening or halt a supervolcano once it stirs. We cannot choose whether asteroids cross our path or whether storms form over the sea. What we can choose is how we prepare, how we respond, and how much we respect the forces that hold our lives in their hands. That choice may determine whether our descendants remember us as survivors, or whether they walk through the ruins of our cities, wondering how we could have been so blind. The Earth is not cruel, nor is it kind. It simply is, restless, immense, and eternal compared to the span of human lives. To see it clearly is to understand both its beauty and its danger. The same planet that gives us food, water, and shelter also hides the power to erase everything we've built. That duality has always been part of the human story, and the greatest mistake we could make is to believe the story is over, that we are safe, that the world has stopped changing, because it hasn't. It never will. So the next time you look at the ground beneath your feet, or the waves crashing on the shore, or the sky overhead, remember this. The Earth is not just your home, it is the most powerful force you will ever encounter. It will test you, it will humble you, and it will remind you again and again that survival on this planet has always come at a price. And what happens next depends not on the Earth but on us. Will we adapt, endure, and respect the warnings written in fire, stone, and water? Or will we, like so many before us, become another forgotten chapter in Earth's long and merciless story? The choice is ours, but time is running out.